back in group policy, on my sales users OU, we have the 3 GPOs linked to this location. Then we have 3 above, 1 at Sydney, 2 at the domain level. If I were to go to the, we'll take the sales users OU. I'm going to right click that and block inheritance. The first thing you notice is an exclamation mark shows up here in that circle. But notice on the group policy inheritance, no policies are inherited. So now only GPOC, sales redirected map drive, the ones directly linked to this location are the only ones that would actually apply. If I remove that block inheritance, now you get the 3 from above. You'll just get those through inheritance. Now, I also have the enforced. Well, let's say I block inheritance again. With inheritance block, we get the 3 we just discussed. If I were to go to GPO-A and click enforced, weird that it does not auto refresh, but it never has in the console for that change. But when I click refresh here, you'll see not only does GPO-A come through, it actually moves to the top of the list. So the reason enforce is the most powerful is because it moves to precedence number 1, last policy applied, wins any conflict. Now, if below that, if I try to enforce GPOC, and my thought was it would somehow override the GPO-A from the domain level, we would be mistaken. Verify that because we'll see both are now enforced, but GPO-A is still at precedence number 1. Now I'm going to undo those. I'm going to unenforce, remove the block inheritance. Now we're just back to where we started from. If I refresh that view, for the security filtering, I'm just going to click on one of my policies. And I'll say, don't show me this again. But when I click on the policy, I have this scope tab that it defaults to. So you'll see right now under security filtering, it says the settings in this GPO can only apply to the following groups, users, and computers. 2 things have to be true for group policy to apply to you. Your user account has to be under the scope of the policy. If it's a computer setting, computer account has to be under the scope of a policy. So with this being linked to the sales users organizational unit, it will only apply to you if your user account is under the sales users OU. If it's a computer setting, the computer has to be in the sales users OU. If not, setting does not even get processed. So that's thing 1. User, computer account have to be under the scope of where the policy is linked, and you have to be a member of this group. Now, I know this says authenticated users, but it actually contains computers as well. So realistically, it should be authenticated users and computers, but it's not. So if I have only some users that I want this policy to apply to, what I could do is remove authenticated users and add whatever group I want. I'm just going to add my sales users. So now you have to be a member of sales users, but your account, user, computer still has to be in the sales users OU. One of the common mistakes people make is security filtering based on a group, and they just blindly think every member of that group is going to get the policy, but then they have users that are a member of that group, but they are not in this organizational unit. Their account somewhere else where the policy is not applied, and then they wonder why some users don't get the setting. That would be why. Now I'm going to reverse that. I'm just going to add my authenticated users back. And that is the top one. And I'll just remove the sales users. And we're back to where we started from. Now, one less common setting, think of this as just value added information. If you are a member of the group that shows up here, these settings apply. But that brings up the question, what if I have a user, a computer, or a group even, and I do not want this policy to apply? Well, this does not really help you out. I mean, you'd have to have a group that contains everyone other than the people you don't want this to apply to. There's no practical way to really do that. If I actually edit the policy itself, You can right-click the GPO. So I'm going to just right-click here on Sales Direct and go to Properties, and you get a Security tab. On this Security tab, there is a permission, if we scroll down this list, Apply Group Policy. So let's say for some reason I wanted to add a certain group. I'm just going to add a user. It does not matter, user or group. I'm going to add my Tony Roberts. Apply Group Policy, Deny. Now, it may be hard to see, but that's actually checked in that Deny column, only for Tony Roberts. So now, when I click OK on that, Tony Roberts would never process this policy. Even if he is under that organizational unit, he gets none of the settings from that policy. Now, that's not very common, but we just want to know it's a possibility. But I'll just cancel all of those there. So again, to recap, our three primary ways are to block inheritance, enforce a policy, and security filtering. And we do remember that if you enforce a policy, enforced will always override a block inheritance. Pretty neat.